And we're with David Bice. He's part of the founding family of Redwood Hill Farms in Creamery. David, thank you for coming, man.
Hey, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
I should say Redwood Farm and Creamery.
Well, Redwood Hill Farm and Creamery, it's a mouthful.
It's a lot. I've been dealing with this all day, people with these huge things, but yours is something I'm quite familiar with because I raised my son on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, he would just call it Red Goat.
Okay,
Yeah, and so I know the product, and I'm really happy with how you've grown it over the course of his life. So he's 6.5 now, and so you've been around a long time, obviously, but not you. I mean, well, maybe you.
Yeah. I was born into it also.
But I was living in Petaluma. No, I was living in Sonoma, and then to Oakland, and it just started showing up everywhere I needed it to be. It was on shelves, and I could get it for him in the middle of the night sometimes. So.
Well, thank you for the support. Yeah, 1968 it all started. Mom and Dad wanted the simple grow your own, raise your own lifestyle. We found an abandoned apple orchard out in Sebastopol. Back in the day, it was really expensive land, as you know, prime real estate.
Yeah.
But even at only $800 an acre, if you can imagine that, they
Wow.
still needed to get a loan. But we made it happen, started building barns and fences, and our little farm was born.
It's amazing, and going from there to where we are now with this, this pretty extensive product line of all. Is it all goat-based products?
It is under Redwood Hill Farm and Creamery. We have a different brand of lactose-free cow dairy. But Redwood Hill Farm and Creamery, the bulk of our business is the yogurts and kefirs available in all 50 states. That went national back in the mid-1980s.
Okay.
And then the cheeses we make, we're really well known, especially in the Bay Area, Sonoma County specifically, for the artisan goat cheeses. And those are very small batch cheeses. They're not available everywhere. They're a labor of love. It takes a lot of labor to make one Bloomy Ryan French cheese, and a little temperamental and a little art meets science with some intuition to make a good goat cheese. So those are more small batch cheeses, but still readily available in this area.
That's great. Well, forgive me for not understanding the reach of your product line. Of course I could find it everywhere I went because it is everywhere I go. But let's rewind a little bit. There was a decision that got made back in '68, to go with goat products and goat milk, rather than sort of our bovine-centric Sonoma County tendency toward cow's milk. Why the split?
Yeah, and we were called a lot of names back in the early days before GoatStream was accepted, before it went a little bit mainstream. Several years
I'd say
later.
it's mainstream now.
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of chefs, wineries, tasting rooms helped goat cheese sort of get on the map and be a little bit more accepted. But really, it was a matter of we had a few of everything on the farm, 2 or 3 of every kind of farm animal, down to geese and, of course, chickens, and I had rabbits for 1 year.
Right. But the rabbit cheese didn't.
No. No, we probably would have tried if we could. But it didn't go that route. The thing is, most of these animals are market animals. We almost grew up at the Sonoma County Fair every year. That was our big social time off the farm. We got to get off the farm, clean up our animals, go to the fair and show them. Now with market pigs, market lambs, steers, you auction them off. They get butchered. They're part of our food supply. And we did a lot of butchering of our own on the farm, including my favorite rabbit that got a blue ribbon. That's what you do with rabbits. But the goats, these are dairy goats. They're not meat animals. Now there is a specific meat goat called the boar goat.
Okay.
But these are dairy goats, so
it's a different species, really.
Really, it is.
Okay, wow.
They're a lot more refined animal, and they're very intelligent, curious, they're personable, they can learn anything a dog can learn. So with a large family, I was the baby of the family when the farm started. Large family, we all had our favorite 4, 5, or 8 goats. We had a pretty sizable herd right off the bat. We needed an outlet. Mom was making yogurt in the kitchen, the same basic yogurt recipe we use today at Redwood Hill. But we needed an outlet, so we started bottling raw quart glass bottles of goat milk.
Wow.
named it Redwood Hill Farm, and that was in the late 60s. And some of those original stores that carried our product in Sebastopol still carry everything we make.
That's marvelous. And we were talking before we started here about your sister really stepping up and pushing Redwood Hill as a phenomena really in the market. How did that transpire? We went from like a smaller family thing to this national operation.
Yeah, well, Mom and Dad started on the 60s, and we were all 4-H kids. And then the family was growing up. We were leaving 4-H. And it was a tough time for the economy. If you remember the 70s, the oil crisis.
That's right, the drought.
Yeah, and the small family farms everywhere around us were just going out of business. You couldn't compete with that scale of a larger dairy or factory farms. But Jennifer really loved the goats. She was the one family member, the oldest of the family, wanted to keep it going. So she acquired Redwood Hill Farm from my parents. Basically, she just started paying the bills, is what it amounted to. Not really buying it, started paying the bills. And her, along with her late husband, Stephen Shack, combined both of their goat herds and had a lot of milk. They were making milk. They started making goat milk yogurt, started making goat cheese, as some of these restaurants were wanting to buy local ingredients and looking for local cheesemakers.
And that kind of brings us to the whole Alice Waters Chez Panisse phenomena, where that sort of locavore culture was beginning to germinate. It also dovetails with this interesting sort of gourmand phenomena that happened in the 70s, where American cuisine was finally beginning to kind of step up. And I think feta fits right into both of those equations.
Oh, absolutely. Our feta we've made, that was the first cheese that Jennifer made that we marketed to the few stores that would carry us back in the day, but mainly to restaurants. And in fact, our local treasure, John Ash, if you remember his original restaurant downtown Santa Rosa, he carried our raw goat milk feta on his menu back in the early days when we started making it in the 80s. And even though John Ash, it's not really his place anymore, it has his name on it, to this day you can find Redwood Hill Farm feta on their menu all these years later. And so he really helped us in this area. Alice Waters at Chez Panisse helped us in the East Bay and around the Bay Area. It was really these chefs that really made goat cheese more mainstream, more accepted.
But it wasn't just them making it mainstream. They chose your goat cheese for, I think, specific qualities. What sort of differentiates it? Or was it just the fact you guys were the only ones around?
We were, some of the very first. Of course, most people have heard of Laura Chanel, and there was a short time she actually kept her goats at our farm when she was looking for land to expand her operation.
That's great.
But we were making goat cheese way back in the early days when there was nothing but cow milk cheese. All of our rich history of cow dairies in Sonoma County is a great one. Nobody doing goat. In fact, when we get together at these 4-H or FFA meetings at the Grange Hall, and dairy farmers are talking to each other, and if you made cheese, which was very few of the cow dairy farmers also, and us, the conversation would come up, well, what kind of cheese do you make? And the answer is, well, we make both kinds, cheddar and jack. And well, we did make a goat milk cheddar and a goat milk jack. It didn't really take off. Maybe the marketplace, people weren't quite ready. This was the early 70s. Right. So it took a little bit more finessing, and especially on Jennifer's part, to study in France and make some really world-class French-style bloomy rind cheeses that these chefs like Alice Waters demanded, not just local, but quality ingredients.
We better come back to that in a second here. We're with David Bice from Redwood Hill Farm and Creamery. We'll be right back. And we're back with David Bice. He's part of the founding family of Redwood Hill Farm and Creamery, purveyors of an amazing array of dairy products sourced from goat's milk. And where we left off was this burgeoning consciousness and awareness and appreciation for goat-based cheeses that kind of began to germinate in the 80s with people like Alice Waters pushing that and having a demand for a certain quality of locally produced product. I cannot for the life of me pronounce the name of the cheese you mentioned in the last segment. How do you, it was sort of with a B or a...
well, the French-style bloomy rind cheeses, that's a category of French-style cheeses. Bloomy rind, meaning cultured. Okay. There's a bacteria, there's an edible rind on the outside.
What is bloomy, though?
Bloomy means it's the bacteria or culture that literally blooms to form the rind. And really? That's any brie or camembert is an example of a bloomy rind cheese.
Got it. Okay. And so, how did Alice Waters know about this cheese? And obviously she couldn't find it here originally.
Yeah, well, Jennifer did go to France several times and basically ate her way through France like people will do, eat and drink your way through the countryside. And Loire Valley of France is very well known, not just for its wines, but for its variety of cheesemakers. And goat cheese in that valley is the dominant cheese. You're going to find a crottin de Chavignon. The French pronunciation for what we make is a California crottin. Okay. What that is bloomy rind French cheese, a real small barrel-shaped cheese. And we make it with the traditional rind or culture that comes from Europe. It's called Geotrichum candidum, very specific to this cheese.
How did you get the culture over here? Like literally in a jar or something?
We bring it over. There's companies, and you know, just order the culture, and you can get it. But there, they've been making it for eons. And so Alice Waters, a little bit French inspired in her own cooking, and I'm sure if you've been to that restaurant, you sort of notice that, but then using local ingredients. And we have this great Mediterranean climate. Yeah. We can grow almost anything in this climate. So there's a lot available. So maybe the cheeses were lacking. Jennifer studied. She really became her own self-taught cheesemaker and came up with these great French-style bloomy rind cheeses that just knocked her socks off at the restaurant. And so Alice Waters did bring in Redwood Hill Farm cheeses exclusively for a while. And this is after Laura Chanel cheeses were already getting on the map and we're sort of following her as far as the popularity. And before you know it, trendy restaurants everywhere are using local ingredients, sustainably and ethically produced. All these sustainable buzzwords started coming around, and it's something that we had always been doing.
I know, and you're so ahead of the curve. I mean, here we are, it's 2016, and you know, finally there's this consciousness and appreciation for that going, maybe 10 years, you know, the last 10 years that's really happened here, but you guys are like 30 years. You know,
yeah.
You know, why did you guys have that ethos starting off?
Well, we really started with Mom and Dad. Dad being a baby born during the Depression. His parents instilled that grow your own, raise your own ethic in him. And my parents wanted that in us as well. So we found this apple orchard in Sebastopol and had enough room to grow our own gardens, grow our own food, have all the different animals. We settled with goats because we fell in love with the goats, and that's how the whole goat milk started.
Well, I could see how the grow your own ethos would come out of you know, being a child of the Depression. I get that, but the choice, and a very conscious choice, you know, to be, you know, sustainable and to be substantially organic and that kind of thing, right? That's a political choice. That's something you guys have to. The culture wasn't there when you guys started this.
Absolutely, it can be viewed, and rightly so, as a political choice these days. At the time, we didn't have money to go out and buy synthetic fertilizers. I mean, but back then it was called gardening. You didn't have to put the organic in front of it. You know, as recently as the 60s and 70s even. If you're gardening, you're gardening.
And you weren't putting pesticides and crazy stuff.
And we couldn't afford it, but we had goat manure. And to this day, the last couple of weeks, I've been prepping our garden beds. We have extensive garden beds and garden areas at 3 homes on the farm. I've been spreading the composted goat manure, and that's what we use. And I call it goat gold. You couldn't buy anything this rich, this good for the gardens, even if you wanted to at any price. So it was born out of necessity. Now the solar project that came along, that was Jennifer's thinking. Now the way the food system is, to get our yogurts and kefirs in all 50 states, the way our distribution system is, it has to be trucked. It has to be trucked all over. It's a lot of fossil fuels. It's a lot of expense and effort. So we can't do anything about that, but what we could do is be 100% solar powered at our farm, help offset that carbon footprint.
You're actually 100%?
Yeah, actually on an average for the year about 110% at the farm.
So you're actually putting power back into the grid?
Absolutely. We stay tied up to PG&E. We get monthly credits if we generate excess. And then a little check from PG&E at the end of the year.
That is crazy.
Little miniature power.
I mean, how big are your panels? I mean, like you got like a roof over Sebastopol we can't see?
They're actually much more efficient. Each year solar panels become more efficient. These panels specifically were made in California, not China. That would defeat the purpose of what we're about.
Right.
And they're also on these automated trajectory systems where the panels will follow the trajectory of the sun throughout the day. They start out straight east, overlooking the valley below us. Iron Horse Vineyards are our neighbors to the east, and follow the sun in the southern sky to the west. So I think it's a total of 6 of these giant panels that move slowly throughout the day, generate enough power to run our entire farm operation. That's our dairy, milk house, the milking parlor, all the barns, plus 2 homes.
Wow.
And we're a miniature power plant putting some back into the system.
That's amazing. Is everyone like part of in the family working with the farm and you guys?
No, you know, we all grew up into it. Jennifer is the only one that has been with goats all of her life. And she's very legendary in the goat world. There's a goat world, like there's a dog world and a horse world. And as a cheesemaker.
Yeah.
In fact, she was, the American Cheese Society put her into their Academy of Cheese. It's sort of a Hall of Fame honor as one of the country's pioneers of goat cheese, along with Laura Chanel.
That's great.
Mary Keene of Cypress Grove, makers of Humboldt Fog, if you know that cheese. So she was one of the originators. So she was the one that really wanted to do everything as sustainably as possible. And we don't need the fertilizers, the chemical pesticides or herbicides. We don't need that. There's never a need for it. But she wanted to be solar powered to offset that carbon footprint, not only at our farm, but at our creamery, a separate location in Sebastopol. And then also we're certified humane through HFAC, Humane Farm Animal Care.
Wow.
Which is very important to our family. And we didn't have to change anything for this third-party designation. It's just the way we've always been with the goats. But we wanted one more assurance for our customers, maybe they're in Vermont or Florida or New York buying our yogurt, just to let them know, if you can't know us personally, can't visit the farm during our open house weekends, know that the goats are treated very well.
It's obvious you guys love these guys, so the goats, so that's great. We're with David Bice, Redwood Hill Farm and Creamery. We'll be right back. And we're with David Bice. He's part of the founding family of Redwood Hill Farm and Creamery. We're having a great chat about sort of the evolution in the marketplace of goat-based products, goat dairy-based products, as well as the farm itself, which is a very special place, you know, not just in terms of how you produce your stuff, but well, why you produce it. But one thing that I was thinking about is the notion of terroir, which we often associate with wine, obviously. How does your particular farm influence the goats and thusly the dairy products that come from them?
Yeah, great question. There are several ways. First off, we're right above Green Valley AVA of the Russian River Valley, so I like to say our goat milk's a Russian River appellation. And
that would mean something. You could have conjunctive labeling on your
yeah, Sonoma County marketing right there.
Totally. Yeah.
But there are several factors. Say for cheese, for example, it's the climate. Wonderful climate. Goats love our climate. It's never too cold, never too hot. What they eat is a big part of it. Now, we encourage browsing. Goats are browsers by nature, not grazing animals like sheep and dairy cattle.
Okay, what's the distinction between browsing and grazing?
Big distinction there, and it's something that's a common misconception about goats. People ask us, well, are goats out to pasture? Are they grass-fed? Well, of course our goats out to pasture, certified, humane, raised, and handled. Right. We encourage their natural browsing behavior. The difference is where sheep and dairy cattle will eat grass to the ground. Goats are frolicking in it. They might nibble on it. Our pasture grass is already knee-high, going on waist-high with the recent rains. They'll nibble on it, but they're looking up for their food. They're like deer, that they want leafy things. They want to reach up for the redwood tree branches, reach through the fences for the bay laurel leaves, wild blackberry vines. They love roses. When I'm pruning the roses at the farm, I throw them the prunings, and that's candy to them.
And they can digest that stuff. That's,
absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. They can work through a blackberry bramble in no time flat, but if you want a lawnmower, you don't want a goat, you want maybe sheep.
Right. You see the woolly weeders out there sometimes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is it true that goats can eat anything? I mean,
that's another misconception. They're actually very picky eaters, but they're very hardy. And being very intelligent, very curious animals, they discover the world around them with their lips, sort of like a 2-year-old child might. Right. They'll put anything in their mouth to try it out. Right. But not because they're eating it. Now, they might play on your shirt sleeve and take it to shreds. They're not eating it, they're just playing with you. It's something for them to do, something to nibble on. A friend of mine told me once that as a kid, the goat ate the vinyl convertible off the Mustang. Well, they didn't eat it. They may have taken it to shreds, but they did not eat it.
Wow.
But they are picky eaters. They won't eat anything soiled. Our goats get a large percentage of their diet from alfalfa hay. We also grow Tagasasti. It's a high-protein fodder we grow on farm for them. Because these are milk goats, some of the highest producers in the country. They need a really good, consistent quality diet, but we do encourage that natural browsing behavior as well. And so their diet, their lifestyle, we like to say happy goats give the best milk. A zero stress lifestyle is really important to the best tasting milk, and that's what our goats get.
And you can actually taste, I mean, I would imagine what they eat is expressed in the milk. So if they're eating roses and berry bramble bushes and stuff like that, I mean, does something come through?
It does. Growing up, before we knew a whole lot about goat husbandry, and we were just this crazy hippie family milking goats and living off the land, you know, our goats ate a lot of poison oak. and
it doesn't bother them if they eat it.
It doesn't bother them, but they were eating a lot of things they like to naturally browse on, which was poison oak, maybe a lot of pine needles, and that would influence the taste of the milk. And we learned early on that they need a more consistent diet. Their milk is going to taste a little bit off. A little side note about the poison oak, there's anecdotal evidence. I don't think there's been any real research done, but people that grow up on goat's milk never get poison oak. Maybe because most goats are eating poison oak in our area.
That's interesting. I remember we put our son on your goat's milk as a strategy to allay some of the allergies that we thought he might inherit. And to this day, we're pretty confident he doesn't have any allergies. Now that might be anecdotal, just something, you know, but he loved it. Did you find like parents seeking out your products for those kind of strategies and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. When we first started bottling milk in quart glass bottles, it was an honor system for a quarter, 50 cents, come on up to the farm and leave the payment and grab a quart of cold milk. And a lot of times it was people that couldn't handle cow milk. There's a lot of digestive issues with cow milk for lots of various reasons. But goat milk worldwide is much more popular than cow's milk. I think the ratio is about 70-30 in favor of goat milk if you take the world as a whole. Because goat milk is, the fat globules in goat milk are very small, much easier digested than cow's milk. And there are more and more people, for whatever reason, becoming lactose intolerant to cow's milk, or they have that dairy allergy. And so a lot of reasons why, because of the different nutrients in cow's milk, goat's milk, I should say, it's easier to digest. That's the biggest health benefit, but it's also higher in to and some nutrients and some of the trace minerals also. So,
okay, in your observation, why did America make this decision to commit to large-scale cattle dairy production versus, it sounds like the rest of the world, which went with goats and other animals? Why cows for us?
Well, that's a really good question. There's a few different theories, but in Europe they're already developing cow and big cow dairies, and it was an economy of scale. Bigger is better is the way America's always been about, whether it's our diet, large amounts of this, large amounts of that. So an economy of scale probably played the biggest part in that. And then when these dairies were being started, land was cheap, and you didn't have to feed the cows. They just let them graze on the pasture land. So you have 800, 1,000 acres. You can run a few hundred cows and no problem. But with goats, they're a lot lighter on the land.
Right.
But they do need to be fed a diet besides their browsing for good, consistent, quality goat milk. So, but more and more goat dairy is becoming more popular. Part of our farm, we sell stock, whether they're young does or young bucks that we can't keep, to dairies all across North America, including Canada and Mexico. It's part of our business because we have some of the finest dairy goats in the country, if not the world, and we're known for that. And goat dairy is becoming very popular. Over the last several years, it's still trending up right now.
Yeah. David Bice, thank you for coming in. Redwood Hill Farm and Creamery. Where can we find you guys online?
Online, redwoodhill.com.
Okay.
We're on the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Redwood Hill Farm and Creamery. And we're starting an Instagram account, so see cute pictures of our baby goats.
Oh, that's going to be a huge hit, man. Yeah. Well, I hope you come back and we'll talk some more about this. It's fascinating stuff, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, David Bice.